Okay, I am recording a video on how we do our 4 basic techniques, our surface decoration techniques for our stamp project. For my stamps, I'm making 5 kitty cats, right? And I know, according to the instructions, that I want each of my cats to incorporate, to at least of the 5 of them, to show each of these techniques, right? So the first technique I'm going to show you is sculpture. And I'm going to sculpt the cat that I haven't sculpted yet. I think I'm going to do this cat, the one where it's like curled up on itself, right? So now I have my clay that I wedged. All right, I'm going to take it out, but I'm going to kind of like leave it sort of sitting in the bag so that like it's staying moist. Does that make sense? Let's look over here, guys. Let's not work on the drawings right now. I'm going to leave it kind of in the bag so it stays moist. And according to the instructions that I'm providing to you guys, you want to make sure each stamp is no more than 1 ounce of clay. So I have the scale. That's about 2 ounces. So 1 ounce is literally 1 line. Okay, it's okay if you go a little bit over. The reason why we want to weigh out the clay that we use for our our magnets. I keep saying stamps, I don't know why, I mean magnets. It's because we don't want them to be too heavy, right? Because we have to actually glue the metallic magnets on the back. We want to make sure it can hold it up. So I weighed it out. All right, so I need to sculpt. What is sculpture? As it says on here, sculpture is using your hands and a variety of tools to create small 3-dimensional forms to attach to the surface of your clay project. All right, so I am simply using my fingers. I have water nearby. If I need to use reference images, I can. And I'm simply sculpting out the shape of my cat based on my drawing. Does that make sense? So that's all sculpture is. It's the most basic thing that you can do. This is what you've done if you've worked with clay before in the past, if you've worked with Play-Doh. I'm simply using a little bit of water like you did when you sculpted your animals the first or second day that we met, right? And I know my cat has a head. And at this point, so you can see the body and the head of the cat starting to come together, right? At this point, my clay is very plastic. So I am just attaching it just by smushing the clay together. However, I want to show you, and this is very important. If you started working on this today and then came back to class the next day, the clay would be in what stage? It may have dried up a bit, so it goes from plastic to what stage? Leather hard, or leather, right? Once my clay gets into the leather hard stage, it's no longer soft and mushy. If I want to attach something to it, like I want to put the cat tail on, let's imagine that this clay was a little bit stiffer. You have to do something called score, slip, and fuse. Do you guys remember me mentioning that last class? The score, slip, and fuse technique? So if I want to attach this tail onto the cat, and we're imagining that just starting to show you guys what it's going to look like. Right? If my clay was leather hard, I couldn't just stick this tail on and leave it like that. It would crack and break off. So there is a technique called score, slip, and fuse that I need to use. And there are 2 tools that you can use to score. I will show you those tools. All right. Anytime you have more than 1 piece of clay that is leather hard, you have to score the clay where it attaches. So right now I'm scoring. That just means I'm taking either my wire brush or what's called a serrated rib tool. And I'm creating little rough texture both on the cat and also on the tail. Think of it like Velcro, guys. Think of it like Velcro. When you have two rough surfaces that connect together, they have a better chance of staying connected. If you have two smooth surfaces and you try to connect them, they tend not to adhere to one another. All right? So I scored the surface of the tail, I scored the surface of the cat where it goes, and then I'm making something called slip. Sometimes we have slip cups by the sink, which is just clay mixed with water. I'm just making a little puddle here with water mixed with clay, and that's going to be my slip. So I can take a paintbrush, or I can take my finger. Think of slip like glue, and I'm just going to dab the slip on the scored areas. You can use your finger too. And I'm going to dab the slip here. And now I'm going to attach the tail to the cat. All right. Now the last stage, all right, is to fuse it on. If I let this dry, as it dried out, it would crack and just break off. I need to make sure that that tail is fused on really well. There's a couple of different tools you can use to do that. For your stamps, the tool I recommend the most is what's called the burnishing tool. Everyone see this? It's a rubber tip tool. It's really great for getting into tight, hard to reach areas. Tight, hard to reach areas. All right, and what it'll enable me to do, I'll kind of spin around so you guys can see, is it lets me get in to those tight little spots in between the cat body and its tail and fuse it on. So I scored it to make it rough, the surface rough. I added slip, which is clay and water, acts like a glue, and now I'm fusing it on. And not only am I using the burnishing tool, but I'm actually going to use a paintbrush with a little bit of water, and I'm going to clean it up. So you guys see now how the cat tail is really well attached? Okay, and all of this is sculpted on. All right, other features could be my little cat paw, then my ears, and so forth and so on. This will be one of the primary techniques that you guys use to shape out your stamps, okay? Details can be added to this, but I'm not gonna worry about that now. I'm gonna put it aside. Does everyone understand basic sculpting? Okay. Another suggestion that I have for you guys is I'm concerned about the weight of my stamp. I can always, from behind my stamp, I keep saying stamp, magnet, from the weight of my magnet. I want to make it a little bit lighter. You see this loop tool? Right, it's a little loop tool. I'm going to use it, and I'm actually going to do something called hollowing out. And I will periodically come around and look at your magnets, and I'll say, you know what, that's a little too thick. That's a little too heavy. Why don't we hollow it out from the back? Because no one's going to notice the back of the magnet, right? We're going to be gluing the metal magnets on the back. So as you can see on my cat here, it's hard to tell underneath the magnets, but I hollowed it out a bit. You can scoop out some of the clay from behind on your sculpted forms, and this will help to make your magnet a little bit lighter. Make sense? Okay. Again, these demonstrations are just to give you an idea. When you're working, I'm constantly moving around the room, providing feedback and guidance. So don't feel like you have to memorize every single thing that you're watching now, or those of you watching the video. This is just to kind of give you ideas on how these techniques work. All right? So that's sculpting. The second technique that will become the basic technique for you guys to make your stamps is the relief technique. I pre-rolled out 2 1/4-inch thick flat pieces of clay. Does everyone see that? Remember I talked about making a base. Some of you had ideas. You needed to make a base and then you needed to build your stamp on top of it. Okay, so the relief technique, cutting out text or image from a thin slab of clay and then attaching them to a clay surface. How did I roll out those slabs?
With the roller.
Yeah. You may have noticed I put out some tools, rolling pins and 1/8-inch thickness strips. I'm going to move this out of the way for a moment. I also put out canvas. Okay? You are going to lay canvas down if you are using relief. Put out your 2 thickness strips. Take your piece of clay. Again, you can weigh it out if you need to. Now watch what happens. How do I know when I'm done rolling with the rolling pin?
When you can't roll it out anymore.
When clay is not moving anymore, or I can simply look down here and make sure my wood rolling pin is touching what we call the thickness strips. Now I have a nice thin piece of clay. I could use it as a base, or I could use it to cut shapes out of. Everyone see that? It's very plastic right now. How might I get this to be a little bit more leather hard?
Let it dry out.
I could let it dry, or in the back of the room I have a fanning station. You turn on the fans, you put it in front of the fan, check it every couple of minutes, and eventually you get to a point where the clay is much stiffer, right? So this is not as floppy as this. So when you're using relief, you want to make sure your clay is leather hard. Now let me show you how to use the relief to actually make the form of one of your magnets. You guys are being awesome, super patient, and I promise the rest of the demo will go by very fast. Okay, so I don't want to use this one because this one's too plastic. I want to use one of the leather hard ones. Which kitty you want me to do?
The last one.
This one?
Last one.
This guy?
Yeah.
Okay. So, this guy, I already made him, but I'm going to make him on a base now. I want to make a nice little rectangle base, and then I want to build the cat on top of that using the relief technique. So I'm going to take a ruler and what's called a pin tool. All right, I'll show you guys on the first day you start working with clay how to use all these tools and where to find them. I'm going to measure out for myself a 1.5 by 2 inch rectangle, and then I'm going to build my cat on top of that, because this feels like a nice size magnet. And if you remember me mentioning to you guys last class, I did say you want to try to keep your magnets no bigger than 2 by 2 inches. Okay, does everyone see that? Okay, what can I use to cut this out? I have a couple of different tools for you guys. You can sign out an X-Acto blade from me, which I keep at my desk, and I'll happily give them to you. Or by the clay tools, I have some blades as well. All right, I find the X-Acto blades are better quality. I'm simply going to be very careful as I cut, right? When you cut with an X-Acto blade, you never want to cut towards your
Face.
Well, not so much your face. Your face is not going to be the way, but my hands, right? So my hand is not here. My hand's on the opposite side. The nice thing about your clay slab being leather hard, which means it's a little more stiff, is it enables me to really go in and cut it out. Okay. So that becomes the base for my magnet. Everybody see that? This is relief. It's a thin, flat piece of clay, and now I can build other images on top of it. You guys asked me to do this kitty cat right here. Watch as I take tracing paper. I always keep tracing paper out for you guys. I'm going to very quickly, using a pen or pencil. I'm not worrying so much about the detail of my cat right now. I'm not going to worry about his detail in his eyes and all that, but I'm tracing out his basic shape. Okay, can everybody see? All right, so you can take your drawing. You need to make sure it's the size you want. Now what do you think I'm going to do with this? Not on top of my base, but on top of it, of some of the extra slab that I have. Now watch. You can use a pen or a pencil. I'm going to press down. It's going to make an impression in the clay, so I know where to cut it out. This is the longest part of the demo. Then the stamping and the carving is much shorter. Okay. Everyone saw how I traced that? Boys, you saw how I traced that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna show the people in the video, and now I'm just gonna quickly hold it up. Can you all see how it made an impression of the traced image? Okay, what am I gonna use to cut it out? Yep, my X-Acto blade. And the whole reason I'm able to cut this shape out is because the clay is leather hard. So if I tried doing this, if I tried cutting out this relief cat on clay that was super plastic, the clay would lose its shape and you would lose the definition of the cat. So it's very important that you use that fanning station in the back when you're doing relief so that you can have control over cutting out the clay and it doesn't lose its shape. So again, I'm not worrying about all the details on the inside of the cat right now. I'm simply getting the outer shape so I can cut it out of the clay. Just get his little tail. Okay. Pop it right out. So this is relief. Do you guys understand that relief is thin, flat pieces of clay that you stack on top of one another to create an image? Now look what happens. Let me hold it up. You guys see that? How would I attach this relief cat to the base? What technique would I use? I would score it, right? I would score the back of the cat. Whoops. Look what happened. The tail fell off. Do I need to panic?
No.
Nope. I can just attach it when I put it on the base. I'm going to score it. What else do I need to do? After I score it, I add slip. I'll do this quickly. Why is it so important that I score, slip, and fuse now?
So it doesn't fall apart.
So it doesn't fall apart because my clay is leather hard, right? I'm going to make sure I score the back of that little tail. What's the last step I have to do? Score, slip, and fuse. So now I can take paintbrush or my burnishing tool and go around the edge. Am I done? What else could I do to this? I'm not going to for the sake of the speed of this demonstration, but I can add details. I can add, like I did in this one, another layer for the stomach and maybe for the nose and the cheeks. I could do another layer of relief on top of that, right? So you understand that you can build multiple layers with relief. So you have a sculpted cat, and then you have a relief cat. Everybody understand the difference?
Yeah.
Okay, the last part of the demo, you guys are doing great, is carving and stamping. And I'm gonna use this as my example. Carving and stamping allows you to add detail and texture to your magnets. Do I keep saying stamps? I'm just keep saying stamps, don't I? Your magnets, all right? So for example, on this cat, I want to create clear definition between the tail and the body. Do you see me using this curved tool? I'm literally just carving into the clay to carve a line, right? I can carve into the clay to create my eyes. Obviously, I didn't put ears on this cat yet. I can carve as much detail. I can carve fur texture, right? So carving is just that, carving into the clay to create detail, lines, and texture. Does that make sense? Stamping is pressing into the clay. So on this cat, you see how I have fur texture on the body? That was me simply taking a tool and pressing it into the clay to make marks. So stamping is anytime you press into the clay with an object. I have, and I pulled out for you guys, a variety of stamps in a stamping drawer. I have letters. I have all sorts of objects, right? I even have, and this is for more relief than stamping, I have geometric shapes that you can stamp into the clay and it actually makes relief pieces for you, all right? So again, the demo is just to kind of give you an idea of the different techniques that we can use. The magic sort of happens when I walk around the room and show you. But carving is carving and removing clay with a variety of pointed tools. Stamping is taking objects and pressing it into the clay to make texture. And it's those four, combination of these four, right? These four techniques that you're going to use to make your magnets. Are there any questions?